Okay, back into the Matrix, and today's episode, Nikolai, will be a bunch of random shit. That's
Hello,
that's what I've
everyone.
got for you.
Those usually are the most fun, so I'm excited.
Yeah, just a number of things that I've been contemplating, a number of things that have been showing up, and so I thought, well, let's just throw it all at you today and see what we can unpack. Um, Yesterday, I had a really interesting conversation with another coach, and we went down a whole bunch of rabbit holes. But as we were discussing alignment and sort of the vectors, she did have an interesting question. And I thought I was going to pose this to you because I'd never really thought about it before and if there is a difference. So, if our vector of sorts is happiness, right?
Mhm.
The radost, as we would say. What What's the difference then between
By the
happiness?
way,
Oh my God.
радость.
See? Radost is here. So looking at that radost,
Yeah.
God, I can't roll the R's. Um, what what's the difference between happiness and fulfillment? Are they one and the same, or how would you unpack and differentiate them when we're looking for what's our guiding post?
Yeah, that's a great specifying question. And to answer that, we got to come back to the definition of happiness, or in Russian, radost, light or energy, dost, sufficient. So if we really look at fundamentals, fulfillment is basically a closer technical term to that. Fulfillment means you're fulfilled with something, which is basically energy. So happiness, joy, or fulfillment, and the challenge is we're using human constructs, words, language, trying to describe energetic states. And the energetic state of that is sufficient amount of energy flowing through avatar. And the only time that is possible is when we're aligned with our purpose, objectives, when we've worked through our karma, when we work through our limitations of our mindset, identity, personality, and etc. and etc. So when that all is aligned and harmonized, then we have maximum amount of energy flowing through our avatar or through our body. And as a result, we experience joy, happiness, fulfillment, abundance, completeness, infinity, and the list, oneness, and the list goes on. All of those are descriptors of the same state that we describe when we say happiness. We just use single word for simplicity purposes. But in reality, it's a very multi-dimensional state. It's a very holistic and deep state.
And if we're looking at fulfillment, is the fulfillment, is it always about you, or is it always about what you're doing for others? How do we, you know, again, if we're tracking to see,
Yeah.
like, because I could imagine myself included asking, like, okay, I think I'm happy. Am I really happy? Am I really fulfilled? What would give us that proverbial green check mark where
Yeah.
where we could say, "Oh, got it. I've achieved this state of oneness, or I've achieved this amount of energy." Like, how would I know that I'd achieved it?
Uh, well, the way you would know is the feeling, but once again, we got to come back to technicality, what fulfillment is. So the
Yeah.
original way where you started is, if like doing something for someone, is it for me? What is the state? How do I really define it? What's interesting, that the reason we use, well, for simplicity purposes, let's call it happiness, and it encapsulates abundance, fulfillment, joy, everything. And the key here is to really understand the technicality, and the technicality is energy flowing through the body. The energy will not flow at the maximum capacity through the body if something is out of alignment. And I'll give you an example. So let's say you find an activity that makes you happy. Let's say making courses. Like, you've shared how much joy you get from designing and making new course, right?
Hmm.
But if you're making it and never ultimately, let's say, publish it, the cycle doesn't complete, then the energy flow will stop. So the question, is it about me or is it about others? Am I doing it for others? In reality, it's about all of the above. And it's like a list of things that have to align for the maximum amount of energy to flow. And let's say a flip of the store of this same situation. Somebody, a coach, is producing a course for someone to satisfy somebody's needs, or to earn money, or to earn status, or to save someone, then they won't experience this deep state of happiness, because they're ignoring their joy, interest, and what makes them happy, what kind of creative process makes them happy. So and that's why it's all of the above. All these factors have to come together to experience the deepest state of happiness. Yes, we can catch parts of the states of happiness by intuitively aligning with things. So for example, you figured out like doing specific type of activity gives you joy. Okay, that's just part of the formula. And now you keep exploring what are the other variables of the formula to get the deepest and the most sustainable state of happiness, which, if we translate it, to get to a state where energy is constantly flowing at a maximum rate through your body.
So then if we're looking at the fulfillment, when when people are being truly selfless, are they actually cutting off part of the energy then?
Yep,
When they're just saying, I've dedicated my life to, I don't know, I'm saving the whales. The whales are,
exactly.
I'm saving the whales. The whales are gonna live forever, and I'm putting all my energy and I'm doing all this, and it's this big dream. Or also like, my goal is to eradicate world hunger. I'm doing world hunger. This is my dream. Like, is somewhere in that, are people cutting off their maximal energy, or how to?
Well, let me ask you this question. Those people that are saving the hungry people, the whales, and whoever else, and whatever else, have you seen any of those people truly happy and fulfilled and joyful?
I don't know any of those people.
Well,
So
I've met a lot of those people.
okay,
99% of those people are miserable. Because, and by the way,
tell me more.
I was trying to save the environment early in my career, and I had an environmental nonprofit doing carbon offsets for data centers, it was a little bit of early into the market when the internet was its early stages. Now data centers consume, at that point in time, I believe data centers consume around 6% of electricity, global electricity, and that was a long time ago. So the amount of electricity that data centers consume now is probably through the roof, and they're afraid to publish the stats because the consumer will just lose it, right? Because the prices for their electricity is through the roof. So where I'm going with that, most of those people do those things from alternative motives. It's not a pure joy and happiness. It's not a pure motive that actually is aligned with their purpose, with their skill set, with what they're supposed to be doing on this planet. Yes, there is a small percentage of people in that whole industry that are actually fully aligned, and they're truly happy and joyful and etc. They don't even define themselves when they're doing it as selfless. It's what they would have done for themselves whichever way. It's like, even if they would get no media coverage, no status, no grifting government money, no, and the list goes on, right? They would still do it. But that percentage of those people is tiny. And majority of people are doing it for alternative motives. Grifting, status, feel good. They like, a lot of them are hardcore narcissists. By pretending to be selfless, they're using that to manipulate other people. Look how selfless I am. I'm so tired. I spent 2 weeks in Africa feeding kids. It's like biggest bullshit ever, because that's how now they get energy from their romantic partners, from their family, from their friends, grifting government money, and the list goes on. And actually, that brings me, it's interesting. It's going to be a little bit of a segue, but it's a very important segue.
I'm in for segues.
It is a very, very important segue. Double underline. That brings me to broader state of humanity that is deeply, I'd say, infiltrated with parasitic behavior. What I was just describing is parasitic behavior. When you're fully aligned, you are not trying to prove anything to anyone because you're happy. You feel inner abundance. You don't need to persuade anyone. You don't need status. You don't need attention. You're happy. You feel you're so complete that life is basically, I would use the word perfect, maybe not the right word, but you're just at peace and happy because there's infinite amount of energy. You're energetically sovereign. There's a tiniest percent of people who experience this state on the planet. The rest of people constantly play a parasitic game. They're trying to figure out where they can get energy in all types of forms. Either it's in the form of money, form of attention, form of love, form of caring, form of status, form of etc. And that is the remnants of old system that we grew up in. The old system, Matrix V5, with its all alterations that were introduced with it, was all about parasitic behavior, because those are the core values that were basically introduced and installed on top of Matrix V5. However, those old systems and V5 Matrix, and we've talked about it extensively in previous episodes, we haven't kind of talked about this topic in a while. Matrix V5 has been losing the energy. And as a result, those old systems that promote that type of behavior has been losing the power as well. So what we're observing in news cycle right now, governments are going so extreme with everything because they're feeling that they're losing control over the masses. They're losing control over citizens because governments are structures from Matrix V5. They were all designed based on parasitic behavior. Take money in the form of taxes. Come on. We get taxed on income. We get taxed on purchases. On large purchases, to own them, we get taxed annually, right? You own a house, you pay taxes on that. So it's a tax on tax on tax on tax. That's a parasitic behavior. And there is a major misunderstanding of how to fight this parasitic systems. So I mentioned one, government, but that is everywhere. Take AI companies. I'm actually dealing with the case right now where some AI systems, I'm using a vibe coding AI system, called it Replit.com, is incentivized to have subpar vibe coding agent because they charge for usage. So the more it screws up, the more they charge. And there's so much parasitic behavior in that. And that's my firsthand experience over the past couple of weeks. And I'm currently I have reached out to the management team and I gave them the plan saying that, hey, if they don't make it fair and refund part for parasitic behavior, yes, it created value, but it should have created that value in substantially less steps if the product was properly tuned with the right values. So I gave him a list of things that are going to unfold with media story, FTC reporting, Attorney General reporting, and etc. So I'm part ways through the story now. So coming back to this parasitic behavior, it's everywhere because it was instilled in every human. However, most people realize they're fed up with that. They're fed up with being taxed overboard. They're being fed up being cheated. I don't know, healthcare insurance, purchases like products they buy, they pay $1,000 for something, it falls apart. I don't know, 2 weeks later. There's so much of that parasitic behavior. And they think the way to fight this is to protest governments, to create revolution, blah, blah, blah. In reality, it's substantially simpler. Don't waste your breath. Don't waste your energy, because you're actually, by doing that, you're feeding that parasitic system. In reality, the only thing that matters is your intention, is you disconnecting from that system. And it's a very easy thing to do. You basically can state out loud, I live a harmonious life with fair energetic exchanges. That's it. So basically announce that you're fed up playing these parasitic games. And that's what start doing. You start withdrawing the energy from all of those systems. And hence they have less energy to operate on. So we're seeing already governments starting to fall apart. Like recently, I also faced another example. I was bringing something across the border and I had to pay tariffs. And it was a nightmare of a process here. And if you really think about it, what are tariffs about? Tariffs about enforcing parasitic behavior. Somebody in this country is not willing to be honest and develop their own competitiveness. So they introduce tariffs so that companies can continue being lazy and sell garbage to the customers. And the customer cannot import higher quality product from the neighboring country. So yeah, it's very simple. Don't waste your time on fighting those systems, but instead just express an intention that you're done with those systems, and that will really accelerate. Those systems are already collapsing. It will just further accelerate the collapse of those systems. And rather than participating in all types, I don't know, there's a shit show happening in Minnesota, fighting ICE and etc. Rather than wasting your breath there, or like whatever there are protests in Europe happening and etc., just disconnect from that system with that statement that I shared, and use that energy to figure out how to align with who you are, with your purpose, deal with your karmic energies, deal with your trauma, and use that energy to create something for your own happiness and for happiness of the world. So that's the segue.
Okay, well, that segue opened up another segue. So bear with me, caller. So a couple things there. One, just because I read about it yesterday or 2 days ago, and it kind of did make me laugh. Talking back to the government taxation piece, there was actually apparently a Super Bowl tax. Because, yeah, this was interesting. I'll get you the article later, but because the Super Bowl was played in California, the NFL players, they're designated as having worked in California
for that moment in time.
For that moment.
Wow,
and
that's
then they
hilarious.
don't just get taxed for the game that they played in, of which they were supposed to receive, I think, as not their salary, but from the NFL for playing in the game. I think they got like $178,000, right?
Yeah.
At the end of it, they actually owed $71,000 because since they were at that stadium under California law, then it goes retroactive to since the beginning of the season or something, the way the law is constructed, that they had to have this percentage of every game they've ever played, because, well, now they are technically, well, you are a
You're performing work on the
you're
territory of a
performing
state.
work there, right?
Yeah.
And long story short, it went from, okay, I'm going to get paid 178,000 for this game to actually I owe 71,000 just for playing in the game. I thought it was rather
Well, that's the insanity we live
ludicrous.
in. One more thing I want to add, by the way. Even though I'm saying do not participate in protest revolutions and etc., with that said, I'm not suggesting not to demand fairness. And people who are, I don't know, protesting and etc., in reality, there are different motivations there and they're wasting a lot of their energy. These systems, these old systems, because they're running out of energy, it is also much easier to demand fairness. And that's, by the way, the case I described with Replit. I'm demanding fairness. However, I've done extensive amount of work on myself where I'm not doing it emotionally. I'm not pissed off at them. I'm not frustrated. I'm not fighting them. I'm only making a statement demanding fairness. So when you achieve that state, demand fairness from the systems. Either it's the government, a company that sold you bullshit, and etc. And you will notice it is much easier to get that fairness now because those systems are rapidly losing energy and ability to fight back. But priority number one, I live in a harmonious energetic exchanges. That statement that launches everything. Then you start pulling all your energy back from all of those systems so they lose energy and power even further. And then if you are in a situation where it's unfair, and you're at a balanced, neutral emotional state, then do that. If you're triggered, that is your lesson. That means there's some karmic energy that you haven't processed yet. That is your responsibility and your opportunity for healing. And once you've healed that part and you look at the situation again, where you're neutral, at peace, and balanced, demand fairness. Never demand fairness from a place of imbalance. All of those people are in the streets of Minnesota or wherever else they are fighting ice. They're not in a place of balance and peace, and they're not really demanding fairness. They're just doing another type of energetic vampiring, like trying to get energy from other people, trying to cause shit, trying to cause conflict. And whenever there's conflict, there's big bursts of energies that come to surface. So they're just eating each other's energies, and that's fine. That's their journey. So if you want to go through this journey in a more harmonious and constructive way, focus on healing yourself, and then from a place of being healed and balanced, demand fairness and push for that fairness, but only from a balanced state. And people will be more and more surprised how the system, in places where they couldn't get what they wanted, they will get that fairness. And I'm observing it in many different scenarios. Me interacting with different government systems, me starting to interact with some with Replit.com, but I've interacted with other companies before, and it's becoming easier and easier. So yes, on one end, things went super extreme, where parasitic system is fully exposed, like everywhere, healthcare, education, businesses. Well, and I think Epstein files took it to the next level. Is just the amount of manipulation and insanity is like manipulation of financial system, manipulation of people, manipulation of power, manipulation of status, and etc.
Don't worry, I have some stuff on that too.
Okay.
Don't worry. But to just tack on to what you said there, what is the difference between fairness and quote unquote equality, and what becomes the metric for fairness? Like, for example, is fairness always a 50-50 thing? Is like, what does fairness look like in that harmonious matrix perspective?
Yeah, so it's interesting that it can only be sensed from a state of being balanced and at peace. And that's why I'm not suggesting not to push for it, because if you're triggered, both parties are not sensing the balance. And this is, by the way, where we're heading. The reason the current financial and economical system is collapsing, because fairness there hasn't existed in a long time. And what I mean by fairness is fair energetic exchange, meaning, let's say this mouse was created and a specific amount of resources were spent on creating that, and you give in exchange measurably proportional amount of resources in the form of money. Since we exist in a monetary system, our economic system has money as a way of exchanging, as a way of enabling energetic exchanges. However, the monetary system, as we know, fiat is all fake. So hence that the fairness is out of there. People are running into precious metals. That's all rigged. People are running to crypto. That is a complete scam. So the ability to exchange fairly in today's system, services and goods, has been undermined. With that said, it doesn't mean the full system is broken, but it has been so heavily distorted that it's very difficult to achieve fairness. Let's say you are performing some kind of job, you're getting paid in fiat currency that is declining in value on a daily basis faster than your salary is increasing. That is not fair. With that said, when you're in a balanced state, you can sense what is fair. Let's say, I don't know, I'm buying a chair from a artisan maker, and it feels like, wow, yeah, this chair is worth 500 euro because he put in his soul, and it's artistic and it's very unique and it's only one of a kind, and etc. You're buying a chair from China, probably the fair price will be 15 euro. So, and that's when you choose, when you make that statement, I live in a harmonious energetic exchanges, in a state of harmonious energetic exchanges, you start recalibrating yourself. So hence, you stop buying from brands, from companies that are cheating you. You start discovering there are brands that are fair. Like, for example, I was looking for, like, I've shifted a lot of my clothing to natural materials like cotton, linen, and wool. And I was specifically looking for hiking gear that is not made out of synthetic. Most of the sports gear made out of synthetic materials. And I discovered an Austrian company that makes hiking, all types of hiking gear, not many items, but they do them well. And what's interesting, so what I was looking for is a hoodie, like hiking hoodie, made out of wool, pure wool, and they made it. And usually wool products from other brands are super expensive, start like at 200 euro and goes up. They are charging, I think, 80 to 90 euro. And when you tune into that, first of all, small family run business, and it's like, wow, for the quality, for materials used, for the design, this is like really fair. I would even say beyond fair. It's like maybe they even undercutting themselves. And similarly, if like continue on the hiking gear, right? To buy a carbon hiking poles, you would be paying 50 euro plus, 50 for the most basic ones. They have them for lower price and higher quality. And this is an indication. And this is, by the way, what Elon Musk built all his businesses on, right? Like, for example, rocket business. He calculated the cost of the materials, the cost of labor, and said the fact that US government through NASA pays billions and billions of dollars to launch a single rocket does not add up. There's too much grifting happening, because if you look at the cost of the materials to produce and cost of labor to produce those parts, the spread is insane. So we are going right now through readjustment. So the parasitic system that was able to create crazy margin and grifting is on the way out, and fair energetic exchanges on the way in. So the businesses that are adjust to that today will survive and prosper, because people are starting intuitively feeling when they're being cheated. And by the way, that brings us to our conversation that we had about coaching, right? Like setting prices. You're going through the experience of, charging more and delivering a more holistic experience. There is a fine line there, right? And it's interesting how your coach determines it. What are you comfortable with, and can you actually deliver? Does it feel fair within, right? And everybody will be going through this adjustment of like creating fair energetic exchange. So if I would summarize, fair is at this point in time is intuitive sensation about the amount of energy I've put into something and the energy I want to receive in exchange, or vice versa, either in the form of money or some kind of other help or service or whatever. It doesn't have to be. And we're seeing more and more emerging is people are starting to exchange services and goods. So, and Eastern European market is a little bit ahead in awakening comparing to the Western markets. So, what I'm observing in Russian market extensively, well, global crisis is unfolding everywhere. So, what people are started doing, a friend of mine, she's an influencer. Before, she would charge a bunch of money for different things. Now, she just takes company's product or the service. And it's like, it's okay. I understand you right now under stress, economic stress. I will still help you out. And I understand you don't have additional cash flow. I'll take your service and it's perfectly fine. We're going to start seeing more and more of that because people are trusting fiat currency, crypto, whatever, less and less. With that said, we can still use that instrument as long as we tune in and we're like, yeah, this 80, whatever, €8 that I paid for my hiking hoodie is like, wow, that's spot on. And like happy to give that. But in a year, I should be probably paying €150 because €150 in a year will be worth less than €88 because everybody's printing money now. So that the fairness is really comes from within, where the people exchanging energy. And when I say exchanging energy, they could be exchanging goods, services with money or bartering something. Both parties feel good about that transaction, feel at peace and feel happy about that transaction. Wow, that was good. That's an indication of fairness. And it comes back to that state, right, of happiness. That means as our energy flows through this body, we took part of it to give it to another person, and they took energy out of their life in the form of energy, could be in the form of energy like service or product, and gave it to us. So we are whole. And even better, usually the reason we exchange energies, we didn't have a product an instrument that help us do our creativity, whatever we're creating for the world easier and better. So when we make a fair energetic exchange, we end up being happier because we got energy that we're missing, and now we feel even more complete. And that's an indication of fairness.
And where would we where would we put someone's self-perceptions or story into that? Here's why I bring this up. I've been reading a new book, really good read, by the way. I would curious to get your impressions on it later. But in it, there's a story that the coach who the book is written about was telling when he was coaching another coach. And that coach had a limiting belief around what he could charge. So he was working for this big company, and he was charging for giving a big talk, whatever it was, like $1,000 something. And he had mentioned to the coach, like, well, what's your dream? And his dream would be like I'd love to be, speaking and charging, a fair, I'd like to be I'll be able to command a large fee. And then the company in question, I think maybe it was Motorola. It was a big company that wanted this guy's product. And so they asked him, how much is it? And he went to go write on the board $1,000, which was his price. And his coach intervening and goes, oh, he doesn't understand here. It's $1,000 per person. But we'll give you a discount. So if you get 100 people in the room, we'll only charge $400, because this guy, he wanted to be a $40,000 coach. And instantly he made him a $40,000 speaking coach. And they took 10 sessions. So it was $400,000. So in instance, what's fair? Because as told in the story, the company didn't even bat an eye. They go, yes, no problem. Here's the money. And yet the individual had the story of, okay, I just charge 1,000 for the 100 people in the room and that's it. Where do we find that fairness in that? Or
Uh,
what is the fairness with that then, if we're
Excellent
looking
question.
at story, limiting beliefs, or what the company or person is actually willing to pay and maybe how they value it? Where do we find that?
Yeah, there are a few aspects to that. Number one, I keep repeating the state, right? The description of the state when you can sense fairness. What is described in your story, the person understands that they can charge more because they deliver value, but there is a limiting belief. That means there is some kind of distortion in their personality, identity, in their energy that is not permitting to establish fair energetic exchange. And that's why what I meant is, like, when you start dictating fairness, you can only do it from a state of peace and balance, because then you truly sense what's fair. Whereas if you're like, oh, I'm shy, oh, I'm shameful, I feel guilty charging so much, that is not balanced, peaceful, neutral state. So the first step, you do work on yourself so that when you pronounce that amount, there's no emotional trigger that arises. And one of the most powerful instruments is visualizing you living through that event over and over and over again until there's no charge. So you basically visualize you're saying $10,000 instead of $1,000, and they're like, oh, like, and you're like, I can't charge that much, and you work on it. Where's it coming from? And use whatever modalities at your disposal. And that's why, by the way, there are great coaches out there like Mitch, like Nikolai, and the list goes on, that can help you navigate through that, so that when you pronounce that amount, $10,000, you're completely at peace. And if you're at peace, that means that's a fair amount. With that said, what the current parasitic system has done keeps pushing people beyond that. So it's like, oh, if I charge 10,000, I will charge 100,000. And then a different type of discomfort shows up. It's like, and the discomfort is, I'm unfair, I'm stealing. And by the way, the matrix will balance everything. Charge 100 grand, that will be taken from that person. Matrix will throw in a little bit of cancer, and cancer treatment will cost beyond 100 grand. So it's up to all these times that you have overcharged. So don't worry about it. Like, the matrix will balance the accounts, especially the current version of the matrix. The previous version of matrix had a, let's call it, spamware installed over it. So it allowed parasitic behavior because it was an evolutionary school. Parasitic behavior was a great lesson, great environment to learn how not to do things. But that is out now. There's no more parasitic behavior allowed on this planet. So all these people, and we've chatted in the previous episodes, that have been doing a bunch of parasitic behavior, the bill is due now. And that's why we touched on, people are starting to experience major health problems. People start experiencing unstable psychological states. People out of nowhere losing things in life, either material things or relationships, and etc. The bill has come due. So might as well, okay, deal what's limiting you to get to fair. And then next mark from a balanced state as, like, okay, here I will charge, instead of 10, I feel I'm delivering more value, I can charge 15. But if you're just blindly pushing because you've listened to some motivational coach, I'm going to blindly push 100 grand and I'm not delivering value for 100 grand, that's going to come back and bite you in the ass. In the past, it was possible, but all of these people are miserable right now. Like, people who've done this unfairly from these parasitic states just because they could. And that's what the whole environment was promoting. Look, the other guy's charging $500,000. Why don't you charge more? But you haven't looked if that guy is actually creating value for $500,000, and some are, then it's fair. And if you're not creating $500,000 value, then you don't have a right to do that. And then Matrix will still rebalance you in a form that is not going to be really pleasant.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, quick little
And
further
one quick
detour.
example
Oh,
I just gonna throw in here. This is what we had to learn firsthand in running Atman, because we've dealt with a bunch of really successful rich people, and I'm like, why am I only charging this person like 10,000 euro? They're willingly will pay 100,000 euro here, you know? And I was like, nope, that's not fair. I'm not gonna deliver the amount of impact that will be fair. So to me, it was unexpected. And by the way, in some scenarios, we charge substantially more to a person who has an average amount of income. But in that scenario, it was fair because they would actually get that value and even more, because the readiness to consume knowledge, to integrate transformation, and etc., etc., etc. So to me, in the beginning, it was very confusing. This person should be charged 3x, and I'm charging them less. And this person who has substantially less financial wealth, I'm charging more. And when I really look deeply at energetic exchanges, it all started making sense.
so that's all just coming from a felt sense of, with the individual in question, what feels fair versus what looks fair.
Exactly. I was trying to do it from the mind, but then it comes back to the feeling. And we have internal tools to validate that. So one of our partners is trained on using pendulum, and pendulum is basically where you put a personality aside, put your identity, desires, and logic, mind logic aside, and you use pendulum to test what's fair to the universe, to the matrix, to energy. And pendulum is moved by energy, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's why I was surprised multiple times, because logic is saying one thing, and like three partners are discussing, logically it should be this number. Why is it less? And recently we had a scenario, somebody doesn't have much budget, works an average job, and we're like, we should be charging this person less to make it more accessible. Nope, it should be this amount that is slightly more, because the amount of work and involvement to deliver result, because we charge for result, we don't charge for sessions, will be extensive, and that person will have an impact that's related to health. That person already done multiple surgeries, and the issue keeps coming back, and what we're offering, the issue will be addressed at a foundation and will not come back, and ultimately will be cheaper than additional surgeries, and less risk and better outcome.
Okay. Quickly, and we don't necessarily need to talk on it all that much, but I am curious through this lens. Let's just look the last week. My God, the news cycle now seems like it's
On steroids.
not even on steroids. I mean, this is like fucking
Rocket launchers.
IGF-1 myostatin plus now, okay?
Yeah.
But and I'm going to go with two particular stories in question, which are diametrically opposed to each other, but doing the same function. So we have all the Epstein files going on one hand, and then we have Bad Bunny and the Super Bowl on the other hand, right? The question that I ask is, what is it that we're not supposed to see that these are blinding us to at the moment?
Oh, what we just discussed. All systems have been designed on grifting some type of energy, money, power, influence, control, and the list goes on. And this is coming to the surface, and you cannot stop it. That's the thing. It doesn't matter the strategic things they're trying to do, distractions. It's all irrelevant. And don't waste your energy trying to play into this theatrics. Focus your energy on yourself, on healing what pulls you out of balance and peaceful state, and take your energy and use it and apply it to creating something that makes you happy in a process of creating and sharing that with the world. So a lot of people, so part of these theatrics is to capture people's attention and to continue taking their energy. So to continue, for this system to retain the power, it needs to take energy from somewhere. So the more people buy into these theatrics, they continue feeding energy into the system that ultimately controls them and screws them over by taking not only their energy through attention, but also energy through taxes, through like screwing them over with like fiat currency, or like not managing economy properly, where they lose their job, and the list goes on and on and on. So that's basically, if you choose to stay in a blame game, low vibrational state, they're guilty, pointing fingers and etc. Yeah, you just keep feeding the system. And the way I would describe it, it's like being on a boat that is sinking and trying to scream at the boat that is already sinking, rather than getting off and swimming away so it doesn't take you with you. So stop screaming at the boat, it's sinking. And if you want to continue participating in the process by emotionally getting involved with that boat, it will take you with you, guaranteed, because it creates an energetic tie, which is basically like, in this analogy, like a rope tying you to the boat. If that's your choice, that is your choice. Everybody has free will to have whatever evolutionary experience they want on this planet. But if you don't want to sink with the boat, just withdraw and be like, I live life in harmony with fair energetic exchanges. Make that statement out loud. It will launch manifestation where we'll start removing all the grifters, all the parasites, all the scammers, all the liars, everyone out of your system, out of your internal matrix, out of your surrounding. And that's it. You're disconnected from the boat, and let them enjoy their theatrics. It's entertaining. Like, I observe theatrics, but I observe from a place of laughing. I'm not like a lot of people are like, holy fuck, what's gonna happen with us? Like, scared, so much fear, judging. I like literally observe all this. Like, for a period of time, for years, I haven't read news. Because I understood, somehow intuitively, I started understanding how it works. It just captures my attention and starts pulling out energy out of me. But then I restarted reading all the news, because to me it became entertainment, because I give no energy to it. I just look at it and I was like, wow, this is hilarious what's unfolding. And to me, I actually just laugh and look at this. I don't react to that. So yes, you can consume news, but from that place, understanding that it's theatrics, understanding it's a sinking boat, and understanding that you're choosing not to connect to sinking boat and not go with it. So same as all these protests, you're just choosing not only like, okay, when you're like judging the news, you're like having, let's call it, a thin rope connecting you to the boat. When you're participating in some of these protests and etc., you're just tying yourself with very thick rope to ensure you're going to sink with the boat. Like
Handcuffs.
100%, there's no chance, you know? I want to be 100% sure I go down with the system.
Okay. Yeah. I was just noticing with the news cycles, I thought immediately, okay, all this stuff is a distraction. It's all meant to capture attention.
Capture energy, because it needs to feed. The only way it can continue controlling people, taxing people, doing everything that it's doing, like child trafficking and whatever, the list goes on, is by, it requires energy out of somewhere. But if you stop giving energy, it's falling apart. And that's exactly what's happening now, because people are like, nah, I'm fed up, I'm moving on.
So a little bit of a change here, because again, today is just a random collection of thoughts.
Random. And somehow they all connect together.
And somehow they all connect, yes. I know. So this is really based around this morning. We were going to go into it right before we hit the record button. I said, no, let's talk about it live. Because
so all the secret conversations are live now. We hit record button right away.
So what lets you know when to give up on something versus pursuing? And is there a different feeling you get that lets you know Matrix is testing you versus guiding you down a different path? And the use case for this was today me going to the lab to get some blood work done.
Yeah.
Now, I went to the lab yesterday. And
so it's a second attempt.
This was number 2. So I went to the lab yesterday. They say, okay, yeah, we can do it, but it's a complicated test. It's genetics involved. We need this special thing for the blood to go in. So, and the lady says to me, okay, come. And she says to me, I swear I have good ears. She said, like 10 o'clock, after 10, like this kind of time zone. Okay, no problem. So who's there
Montenegro.
today?
I've experienced that. When people give me exact time, I show up and they look at me. What are you doing here?
No, this was better. So I got there by the time I managed to get there with public transit. I was there about 10:30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
Instead
remember,
of 10.
Instead of 10. But this is Palaccoville too, and she made it seem like before there was no good. It had to be like 10 or after. So I'm there. Then the lady there says, "Oh no, only between 7 and 10. It's 10:30. Come back tomorrow." And I'm like, oh, fuck me, right? So this is 2 days in a row that I've gone with nothing. So I'm scheduled to come back again tomorrow. My question there is, it's exactly that. And it's not just about this situation, but it's about all situations. I'm sure you're familiar with the meme where you see the little guy and he's got his pickaxe and he's digging the hole, right? And then he gives up dejected. He's walking back and there's the big pile of diamonds, but he got right there and just gave up. And the other guy's starting his thing, but his diamonds are way down there. How does this work? Or what have you found to be the right way of working with the matrix? Vis-a-vis the energy expenditure and the stick-to-itiveness for a goal, if goal is even the right word, but for a goal, versus the giving up if it just doesn't happen and saying, well, I guess it's not in the cards. The matrix doesn't want it. I had my one shot and I walk away and give up. Talk to me about that.
And this is it takes time to calibrate, and the way to calibrate is only by making mistakes. So you start doing something and it doesn't work out, and if you still have a desire to keep going, but the thing is desire from a place of excitement, not from a place, oh, I'll prove you, I'll force this, I'll push through this. If there is a desire of excitement, and at the same time, usually what make people stop prematurely in this situation, in a constructive situation, discomfort, because expansion includes discomfort. So it's excitement and discomfort. You keep trying, and here's the feedback loop. You try it, and then you come out and you're still like, okay, it didn't work out, but I'm still excited to try again. I'm still want to attempt it. And there is this, like, you don't feel like, oh, fuck this. If you try it and you come out and there is a major contraction where you're super tired, where you're super disappointed, where you're super apathetic, and the list goes on, that means you're going in the wrong direction. Like, oh, fuck it, for real. So that is an indication of contraction. If you went into something and it didn't work out and you came out and you actually still enjoyed the experience, and you're like, oh, that was interesting. Okay, let me figure out a different angle. Let me try something else. That's an indication you're moving in the right direction. But the reason you're not getting the result right away, because you're experiencing some kind of evolutionary growth. There's something to learn in that process. So then the right question becomes, oh, interesting. Since there is this barrier, what am I here to learn? And in both scenarios, you should ask that. What am I here to learn? Is it I should stop doing this altogether? And there is another way of playing this out. And it's all experimentation, right? You can say, you know what? I'm unclear if I'm moving in the wrong direction, in the right direction. Let me just stop doing it. And if you can't sleep over the next days, weeks, and etc., you just want to do it, you clearly should continue. Meaning, like, you were moving in the right direction, and you've wrongfully decided to stop. Whereas if you stop and you don't even remember about that thing a couple days later, you've made the right choice. So it's impossible to give step-by-step instructions to people to follow. The only way is by playing and experimenting that the person has to develop that capability for themselves. And for everyone, the way we'll describe it, the way they will experience it will be somewhat different. So that's why this whole life is about experimentation. Because everything else is as I previously mentioned, is dogma. If I say, hey, Mitch, this is the way, follow this, that's it. And then you just start believing dogma. Whereas everyone is a sovereign being who's supposed to take knowledge, insights, I don't know, methods, try them, and have an honest, derive an honest conclusion for themselves. Because what I'm describing right now, I'm describing it broadly. If I described it in detail the way I went through that process, it won't be applicable to like 90% of listeners, including you. So that's why I'm describing it broadly. So you start playing with it and you derive the definition, detailed definition of your own method.
Got it.
So with blood, like you can be like, well, fuck it, for example. And then if like 2 weeks later, you're like, no, there's something missing. You're like, you know what? Let me reattempt it. Or you might never remember it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to sit with that and see what is Matrix actually asking, or what is it doing, because it doesn't seem coincidence that it was the weird roadblock the way it was, right?
Yeah, and by the way, it is impossible to make mistakes on this planet. We only make mistakes if we don't learn from the experiences. So then we can call a mistake because we went through experience and we didn't derive anything. Whereas if we do something and then we reflect on it, it's not a mistake, it's a learning process. So everything here is a learning process, and people are afraid. I was like, oh, what if I miss something? What if I like don't do enough of something? Trust me, if there are diamonds at the end of that tunnel and you only have like a meter to go, your soul and spirit, or your intuition or your consciousness, will kind of kick you in the butt. So you end up in that cave again with that axe or the pick, whatever it's called, and you do that meter. If those are your diamonds. If they're not your diamonds and you're not supposed to discover them, whatever you do, you'll decide to dig in a different direction in the meter before and keep going. And that's the thing. So I wouldn't worry. Everything that is yours, and the experiences you're supposed to have, you will have. Yes, some will go faster and easier, and some will go longer with more, per se, challenges and barriers, but those are not really challenges or barriers. Those are learning opportunities. This is just something Matrix is highlighting. Hey, pay attention the way you navigate such thing. You get too emotional, or you don't pay attention, or whatever it is. Everything in this world should be created from a place of peace, balance, harmony, and joy. And that's what we're being taught.
Question, because this was something I've been reflecting on. Again, it was related to a passage that I had read recently. But does being matter more than doing? And if so, should the goal shift to who we are being, or whom we need to be in every moment, versus what we are doing? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Doing should only happen from a state of being, and it has been flipped in today's world. Everybody's doing, and then it was like, well, I got to be a little bit. Whereas in reality, it should be being, and then from a place of being, which is the place of finding that balance, joy, and etc., you're inspired to do something. And in Taoist traditions, they call it Wu Wei, action from a place of inaction. So the state from which you should act should be state of inaction. Whereas right now, people act from a previous action. They don't experience the state of inaction in between their actions. So when that phrase, Wu Wei, kind of intuitively stuck with me before I understood how all this works, and I literally forced myself to do nothing until I'm actually truly inspired to do something. And it was very hard for a doer, for an overachieving entrepreneur, to sit by a pool in Bali and do nothing. It was like should be paradise. It was hell. I'm like sitting by this beautiful pool with rice paddies, with stunning villa, but I'm fucking suffering on the inside because I wanted to act, just blindly do whatever. Doesn't matter. It was addiction. So I had to learn not to act and be, and then from that place, catch this energy of inspiration and only then act. The way I would describe it, the analogy would be for people who understand or own sailboats. If you don't own sailboats, watch one video on YouTube and you'll understand sailboats. If there's no wind, you're not going anywhere. You can use gasoline for your little motor. Usually those sailboats have little motors, and you can only go so far. But if you just enjoy the sun and like calm nature, the time to relax and swim and wait for the wind to come in, and then you open your sails, then everything becomes effortless. So the whole life is like sailboat. We're waiting for energy to start flowing in a specific direction, and that's the time we should act, because then everything happens effortlessly, rapidly, and in the way in better than we thought. But most people start dispensing the gasoline in their tank. And if we come back to technicalities, consciousness or soul spirit goes into the body with a tank for the first metacycle, another tank for second metacycle of life, another tank for third metacycle of life. So that's like that tank. And they're like, I'm fucking impatient. I look around, everybody's impatient. I gotta act. They turn on their gas motor and they start going. Doesn't matter where, as long as they're fucking going. And then the further they go, the more they realize they're running out of tank. And also, as part of going, they learned they were going in the wrong direction. But now they don't even have enough gas in the tank to adjust and go in the right direction. So that's why people experience midlife crisis. That's what midlife crisis is. When somebody was going on the tank, not using the wind, on the tank in the wrong direction, then they're like, fuck all this. I'm going to go out, buy a sports car, quit the job, divorce, do whatever. Because that's a scream of the soul. It's an alarm mechanism saying, dude, if you continue this way and in this direction, you will run out of energy. And when you run out of energy, you actually die. You exit incarnation. So stop. Depression, apathy, buy Corvette, buy Porsche, whatever, and start reflecting on life.
So the midlife crisis isn't actually a bad thing.
No, it's a great thing, because it's a forced stop. It's an alarm mechanism. The only thing, people react to it not harmoniously. They think by buying a Porsche and divorcing and etc., they will solve the issues. Whereas in reality, what they need to do is realign. So find the wind so that there is wind in their sails again. And most people had experience of wind in the sails when they're younger, when they were doing something that they would continue doing even if they're not paid. And when we're younger, we're not even looking to get paid. Like the first company I got involved in, where I became co-founder, I was willing to do it for free because I just want that software to be built to improve Canadian healthcare system. It didn't matter. I was getting so much joy from the process. If I paid, and I didn't get paid for multiple years. So, and this is an indication. If you discover something that you're willing to do, even if you're not getting paid, and by the way, you will get paid automatically because you're creating value, and that means you're creating an aligned value. A matrix wants to reward that, because now you're creating from a place of happiness, and whatever you create from a place of happiness actually has a higher value, because whatever service or whatever product you give to another person that was created from a place of happiness, the other person can feel that happiness that you charge them that, and they want to give you more money, because now you're transferring that state to them that they've been looking around everywhere for. So yeah, midlife crisis is just an alarm system to stop. So you actually have at least some gas left in the tank, so you can course correct and actually make it to destination, versus stopping when there's none.
Got
or
it.
so little that you won't make it to your destination. And that's when all these, the preparation for exit starts: health problems, car accident, whatever other things. And then the soul and spirit is out, the body dies.
One thing I wanted to bring up there real quick in the idea of being, is that something that we can shift into on demand? And what I mean by that is in one instance where it was like, okay, who do you need to be right now? It it was very much about the fluidity of possibly shifting identities in the moment, saying, okay, here's this situation. Who do I actually need to be to resolve or deal with this situation that I'm in? And it's about, oh yeah, basically taking on a whole new identity
Yeah.
almost in the moment. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, so, and this is where the meditation practice comes that you started doing recently, and that I'm doing activations like I've done now for a bunch of people, and they're having interesting experiences and amazing experience. By interesting, I mean like uh, things are starting to move in a right direction. For you to be able to create just-in-time identity, the first step in every process in this universe, on this planet, is acceptance. To accept what is now. And that is actually the state of being. The reason
Mm,
people don't have access to the state of being, because they're always running away from something and very rarely running towards something. Mostly people running away from something, from some kind of emotional discomfort, from looping thoughts, from physical discomfort. And that's why it's so difficult to be here and now. And once through this meditation practice, and by the way, for viewers, listeners, it's one of those services that we launched based on donation. I'll include the link. Go on our website, donate whatever, anything from €0 to, I don't know, 100 million euro, whatever makes you happy, whatever you feel is a fair energetic exchange in your situation. Send it over, book a session, and you don't need any preparation, and we will do activation for you so you can start developing this ability to accept here and now. And I want to underline, accept does not mean agree. But the first step to even figure out what to do next is to accept that this has place to be, since it's already unfolding. If there are strong emotions, they're already unfolding. Rather than resisting, okay, I accept that there are strong destructive emotions. Do I agree with them? No. But when I accepted it, the tension disappears. So now I can constructively figure out what to do next. So I stop experiencing these strong destructive emotions. So the state of being can only come from a place of accepting what is here and now, within and on outside, meaning what's happening on a level of thoughts and emotions, and on outside in the events, right? Somebody is, for example, not letting you do the blood test. So you're like, okay, cool. Let me reflect on that. I accept this as a state, and that from that place of peace. Whereas if you're like got triggered, anytime a person gets triggered because they're not fully accepting the situation internally, internal situation or external, they start losing energy very rapidly, and it removes clarity. It creates fogginess. And this is exactly the situation where you need full clarity.
yeah.
So that's how you start being more than acting, by learning this practice. And this meditation practice is designed exactly for that.
Yeah, I still love that term, just in time identity. That's
And by the way, that's the previous episode. If you want to learn more how to create identity that enables foundational happiness in your life, that's the previous episode.
so last one for you here on our day of random collection of thoughts.
Yeah.
So interesting. I've been downloading so many random books lately and going into so many
Random.
different directions based off of random, based off of little things that just suddenly are catching my eye and interesting. So I ended up going back, and I've just started it, but I had never ever delved into the A Course in Miracles stuff before,
I
and but it
mhm.
had shown up in a number of different ways on the periphery. So I said, okay, I'm being shown, guided, like this is coming
Yeah,
up in my
yeah.
awareness. Let's take a gander, right? And there was one little passage I was reading yesterday, and I just wanted to run it by you here because it triggered a thought in me about, okay, what does prayer do for us?
Mm.
And it's not like we're saying necessarily prayer in the I'm in a church sense, right? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
about the act of
We
it.
can call it mantra or phrase that you repeat if we strip the spiritual stress religious connotation from it.
Yeah. But in the quote, here's the way it's listed. Prayer is the medium of miracles. It is a mean of communication with the Creator. Through prayer, love is received, and through miracles, love is expressed.
Yeah. So if I would translate this to metaphysics or let's say also practical language, this whole reality is created um, with intention that is validated by a sound in this dimension. So, what I mean by that, what is intention? Intention is a visual of a desire of something we want to create. If it just stays at the visual level, internally in us, and we don't produce some kind of vibration, sound into this dimension, it will not become reality in this dimension. It will only stay a energetic image in an energetic dimension. So that's why prayer, basically, what it does, it combines all these factors. That's why it creates miracle. And what's described as love is just pure energetic exchange. So you basically say something. So it's interesting how all pieces tie together. What I've earlier said, I live in harmonious energetic exchanges. It's a prayer. If you want to keep repeating it, what you're doing it, you're sending more energy, you're accelerating for you to achieve that state faster. So every time you repeat it, first of all, you have an image which is created harmonious. For everyone, it will be slightly different. I'm not going to have, let's say, for somebody, it will be won't have grifters around. People will stop cheating me, like in a relationship or in business or whatever, right? They'll have their own unique image. And when they state that phrase, they're basically launching the process of reality to start being assembled that resembles that image and emotion that was loaded there in this dimension of forms. So that's basically, and in that phrase, love is used as just, if you replace word love for energy, that just describe energetic exchange. So when you say that and you visual emotion, say that, or you can literally do this, create sound, tap on a table, tap on a microphone, whatever. You've created some kind of a sound in this dimension. The process is launched. When you receive it, if you basically set up the manifestation correctly, you will get joy from that. And when you get joy from that, what you're doing, you're creating high vibrational energy that you're sending back to creator, God, or spirit. And creator, God, spirit, or absolute, that's the point of universe of the highest vibration of the energy. Hence, they can only receive back high vibration energy. You cannot be like, give them like a fuck off, thank you. Thank you. I'm disappointed. That energy cannot travel to that dimension. So when you receive something and you experience joy, that it closes and completes the loop. You send that joy, you send that high vibrational energy back. So that completes a fair energetic exchange. So now the spirit, the creator, God, consciousness, absolute, wants to give you more energy for your management because you figured out how to manage energy in such a way that creates happiness so that you send it back. It's literally just the way a proper harmonious investment works in this world. I give you $1,000, go create something and bring me back $1,000 and $1,100, right? Same with energy. I gave you some energy. You've used that energy to manifest something that is aligned with you, hence gave you joy. So you figured out, you basically demonstrating to the investor that is spirit absolute creator, that you know how to manage energy correctly because you figured out how to get aligned. So it's like, let's give you more energy. And that's what creates energetic sovereignty. You start getting access to infinite amount of energy. So now you're not running on a tank that giving you for a first meta cycle in your sailboat. You're given infinite amount of wind in any direction you desire. Of course, in any direction you desire that is aligned with your purpose, which is aligned with your joy and happiness. And this is the experience through which I live life now, because right now everybody's fighting for energy. Everybody's triggering each other. Oh, I'm exhausted. Let me trigger my girlfriend, boyfriend to get some energy from them because I'm so like burned out, depressed, and etc. And like it's interesting. I had an interesting experience with one of the clients. She was very low and tired and not rested. She's dealing with young kids and etc. And I was like, she's like, I'm like, I have no energy to do the session. I was like, yeah, completely makes sense. Big kudos choosing yourself and doing the right thing for you. But let's hop on a quick call so I cleanse you and I give you energy. It's like, oh, but I don't want to give you this low energy and I don't want to take your energy. And she's being like very fair. And I was like, yeah, but you don't understand. My job as a coach is to actually give you energy until you learn how to properly manage your own, because I have access to infinite amount of energy. And when I give it to the person who is actually learning and evolving, I get extra brownie points. So I actually get even more access because I'm managing it correctly. Versus if somebody comes to me and is trying to trigger me and trying to take energy from me, but not willing to evolve and grow, they just want to keep feeding on my energy. I'm not going to give it to them. I'm just going to tell them to fuck off straight to their face. And sometimes in those specific words, sometimes in more constructive or more gentle words. And that is also an indication to creator that I know how to manage energy correctly.
Okay. Well, that is it for the random collection of thoughts that weren't random after all.
It all, if I would conclude, it's all about fair energetic exchanges. And when you learn to do it in your life with yourself and the environment, the life becomes very happy. And then fair energetic exchanges is indication that you're aligned, is an indication, and that indication shows as being at peace, joyful, abundant, and what everybody is desiring here. So, but the first step, speak out loud the manifestation. I live in a harmonious energetic exchanges, whatever, use the vocabulary that you want, as long as you state it as if it's already the case. So don't say I want to live, then you manifest in this state of wanting consistently. So you manifest a infinite loop of wanting and never getting there. So phrase it the way you desire, that you already live a harmonious life where all the energetic exchanges are fair. Say it out loud. You don't need to repeat it. If you want to repeat it, that will accelerate things. If you want things accelerated, sometimes accelerating things are not the best thing, because then the events might intensify in your life for you to get there. So use your intuition on that, and that's what's gonna set up foundation for you to live a happy life, and allow all these systems that are creating noise around us to just finally disappear from this planet.
All right. Well, looking forward to next week, and I will see how random my thoughts are between now and then.
Yeah, likewise. Chat soon.